All right, let's talk about marketing in Christian schools. Now, in the Faithful and Flourishing Christian Schools book, and in this channel, and in my Substack, I am largely talking about the traits that are almost universally or are universally present in high impact, faithful, and flourishing Christian schools. And the questions that I address in my book on this topic are very much, I've never found a high impact, faithful, and flourishing Christian school who hasn't asked and answered those questions in some way. This one that I'm going to talk about today, I would say that there are many excellent Christian schools that are faithful and flourishing, and arguably in the eyes of many, many people, that haven't quite figured this one out yet. But there are also many that have. And it's enough that I've noticed the pattern and the trend, and it's something that I'd like to talk about today. So we're talking about marketing, and with regard to marketing, and I'm talking about it in terms of learning to tell your story in a way that people beyond your school hear it, learn about it, and tell it to others. So it's a kind of storytelling and connecting with people beyond your school through this storytelling. That's how I'm framing marketing. And that can be traditional advertising and traditional strategies and having a strong web presence and website. And it can involve a myriad of activities and efforts. But the content of that storytelling is what I really want to talk about, that I've noticed with some of these really high-impact Christian schools that's striking to me. So when you are an excellent Christian school, an excellent private school even, in a community, there are oftentimes 5 features that people talk about that draw them to the Christian school, that's beyond the Christian mission. So one is the quality of the academics, that there's a pursuit of academic excellence that people are drawn to at some of these Christian schools. A second one is that they see the school as being safe, perhaps safer than the other alternatives that are available in a given area. A third one would be that there are caring teachers, and not just caring teachers, but teachers who get to know the students by name and are really committed and interested in the education of the students and are able and have the freedom and flexibility to adjust and adapt how they teach in order to meet the needs and help as many individual students flourish as possible. And a fourth would be the kind of community, that there's a true sense of community where the students develop good, positive friendships and relationships with one another. There's a kind of positive peer pressure that can happen. The parents get to know one another. There's a really wonderful sense of community, especially in smaller Christian schools, but even in larger ones as well. And so excellence, safety, caring teachers, community. And then the fifth one would be the different kinds of extracurricular and co-curricular opportunities that exist, that are in the arts, in music, in athletics, so theater, fine arts, music, athletics, and perhaps other things too. It could be a chess club. It could be all sorts of things. And when there are parents that are making choices about going to Christian schools, it's undeniable that they oftentimes are considering one or more of these 5 elements that go beyond the distinctly Christian mission. There are private schools that are excellent at academics. They have great community. They have caring teachers. They have safe schools. They have great opportunities. There are public schools that meet those criteria. All of them or some of them, they do particularly well. But in a given community, oftentimes what draws parents and young people to a Christian school may be one of these features first. They may actually look at one of these things even before looking at the fact that it's a Christian school. Maybe for some of them, the fact that it's a Christian school is even a downside to them, and they're willing to tolerate that because of some of these other strengths. Well, and different Christian schools approach this differently depending upon who they believe they're best positioned to serve and who they're trying to recruit and enroll in their school. But here's what I wanted to talk about that I've noticed with a growing number of these faithful and flourishing high-impact Christian schools is that yes, many of them have all of these traits, or many of them. And there are maybe 2 or 3 that they're really world-class at, and some others that they're quite good at. But the way they tell their story doesn't lead necessarily with these five. So there are a couple of different approaches. Here's what I mean by this. Sometimes I've run into some Christian schools that are struggling to keep their doors open, and they just want to, and they care about their Christian mission, and they talk about it in a very evangelistic way, sometimes even, and they have this idea that we get the kids because of our academics, and then we get here, we teach them about Jesus. But it almost comes off as if it's like a trick. Like they hide the Christian message until the kids get there, and they sort of lead with all this other stuff. Hey, we have great sports and great music and great academic excellence, and then they arrive and say, oh, and by the way, we talk about Jesus. Now, I don't want to create a straw man here. I don't think there are many schools that are actually intentionally trying to be deceptive, but they sometimes do downplay that messaging and they elevate the other because they know and think that those other traits are the things that are going to capture the attention of the parents. But here's what I've noticed. I've noticed that the schools that are really thriving, they certainly celebrate and talk about their strengths in one or more of those five areas that I talked about. But each and every one of them, they use as a launch pad to point back to their mission. So that in the process of learning the story of the school, or you go visit the school and you hear about it, that every single one of these is actually just the starting point, and the end of the story always ends up with Jesus, or always ends up with the centrality of God's word, or the distinctly Christian mission and identity, and how we nurture the faith and lives of students. And it's a mind, body, and spirit, a spiritual formation component to the education. So if they're talking about academic excellence, they'll say, yes, we are world class and we will rival the best schools that you can find. And by excellence, we mean that we're also going to point them to the truth of God's word. And we believe that there are things that are true for all people, all times, and all places, and that God's word is a source of knowing alongside all of this other great knowledge that they will learn. So they kind of lead to that. Or it's about safety. And yes, we do strive to keep our young people safe. And we also care about the fact that as they're feeling safe, it's even easier for them to know and be reminded of the fact that they have a God who is with them always, even in the times of fear in their lives. And or when they're talking about caring teachers who personalize things for the students. We have a God who knows us by name, and so we believe it's our calling to know each student by name. Or when they're talking about the community, and you get the idea, they'll go through each and every one of these, and they'll talk about it, and they'll acknowledge the strength enough to maybe draw in the parents, and the parents they're acknowledging what the parents and kids like about the school in terms of those five features, but they're not going to shy away from using it as a chance to, not in some kind of surface way, but in a really meaningful, substantial way, to say, yes, and here's why we do that. Here's who we are. And if you want to be a part of that, we would love to have you. So I give you that as some food for thought as you think about the storytelling and the marketing and the recruiting at your school. I hope you find this helpful, and I look forward to any comments you might have.